This is such a change from my best books of 2024 video when I had a massive glass of wine and I was causing everyone anxiety because it just looked like I kept on spilling it. I never spilled it, okay? I don't know what it is with you guys and the lack of faith in me. The amount of times I'm like moving a cup around like this and, you know, like I'm not going to spill it and I'm not even going to pretend to either. But hi, welcome and welcome back to Gavin Reads It All. It is that time of year where I give you a rundown of my best books of 2025 and I have had, again, like I think a pretty good reading year. I feel like the books that are going to be mentioned in this video are going to be a little bit all over the place. Like, I don't think there's any, like, cohesion with any of this, and I have included sequels. I haven't included rereads because I did reread quite a lot this year as well, but I mainly reread books that I've loved in the past, so there's no point putting them on again. And I was going to do a top 25 books I read in 2025, but I feel like we get to a point where it gets a little bit too ridiculous, so I'm going to cut it down to top 20. My top 20 books of 2025. I did read about, I think, like 240 books this year, 230 books this year. So that's only a small percentage of what I read. Let's get into my top 20 books of 2025. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like if you enjoy, subscribe if you haven't already, and give the high points as well if you have any. And let's just see what kind of mess this video becomes. Okay, my number 20 is a little bit of a cheat because I have a series. But that is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. I can't really pinpoint an exact favourite book in this series that I just wanted to highlight in this video. But I read all of these books this year and I enjoyed every single one. But just like with the Raven Boys and other book series that I've put on my best books, I didn't give a single one of these 5 stars. However, the entire reading experience of reading the series was a 5-star reading experience. I said the exact same thing about the Raven Boys series. I didn't give a single one of those books a 5-star either, but I still had one of the best times reading the series in general. I think I gave a couple of 4s and 4.5s, but never a 5-star. But yeah, the first book is Malice, and this is not my favourite book in the series. Again, I don't know what my favourite book is. It'll probably be like Ruin or Wrath, but this series is set in the Banished Lands, and there is a prophecy. The prophecy speaks of a god's war, and there is a black sun that will bring darkness and a bright star that will bring lightness to the entire situation. And we follow predominantly Corbin. This is told in multiple POV, but we predominantly follow Corbin and his family. And it's one of those, you know, epic fantasy series that I think is so hard to explain because it follows a lot of the same patterns and formulas as previous epic fantasy books. But because this is so rich in character, it does feel a little bit different to a lot of the ones I have read, despite the plot pretty much following the same kind of footsteps, while also having some pretty good revelations in the third book that just absolutely had me floored. But I was very invested in so many of the characters, and we didn't get all of the POVs that I wanted, but the POVs we did get, they meant something. And it was very great to follow kind of 2 sides to this war and seeing the progression between them and who I was rooting for. And even if I wasn't rooting for a character, I still found them so heavily interesting. I didn't need to like them in order to still be riveted by their sections. Overall, there are maybe some slower parts to this series that I wasn't hugely a fan of. I do think the second book probably highlights some of the issues that I probably have with the series more than anything else, with pacing, with plot, but such a good time. I really enjoyed the series. And it was about time I finished it as well. I actually read Malice back in 2022 for the first time, and I did enjoy it. So I guess technically this is a reread, but I never continued the series. So I reread this and continued the series for the very first time. So the series is in my top 20, okay? In number 19 is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. And this is a surprise because this was a book troop pick that I read because my friend Gabby from Gabby Reads, bless her heart, invited me to the live show. And this was the first book troop book club pick that I've been a host of that I actually like loved the pick. So is it 4 times I've been on Gabby's book club? I think it's been 4 times, yeah. So 4th time was the charm. This one follows Jess, who comes across a young girl who is hiding outside of her home. And there is like this monster that is following this young girl. And Jess ends up having to sort of protect her and run away with her. And oh my gosh, like there were so many great parts of this story that made the plot really exciting. And there's quite a lot of blood, quite a lot of gore. And you know, some really heartbreaking moments too. I felt like it had such a fantastic exploration into family dynamics, whether that's between a daughter and a mother or a daughter and her father. And I freaking loved every exploration of that and just how this book kept me entertained and excited all the way through. And I do feel like you have to kind of this book splits into something totally different to what I was expecting when we get to, I think it's like a dentist office or was it a doctor's office? One of the two. And as soon as that happens, you start to see exactly what kind of genre, in what kind of direction we're going in with this book. And you could either love or hate that. I ended up loving it. I thought it was great. So yeah, I thought this was like such a fun time. I do have a full on book club discussion with Gabby and Steph, filled with spoilers if you would like more. And number 18 is my first of 3 Stephen King books in my top 20. And this one is Different Seasons. So this is a collection of 4 novellas, and I definitely have preferences over which novellas I prefer. So Apt Pupil, I would probably say, was maybe my favorite from this because of how utterly horrifying that story was. This one follows a young boy who knocks on the door of a former Nazi, and he ends up striking a conversation with him. And this boy is the only person who knows about this Nazi's past. And oh my god, the conversations they have, the way that the story goes, was genuinely so upsetting and horrifying. I was mortified by so many of the things that came out from that story. It's a great examination into how people's interests in certain morbid things can really take over someone's life and how that can really change them. And yeah, like there's definitely a fine line. I did also really enjoy The Body, but it wasn't like my favorite. I know there was a film called Stand By Me, which I have not seen, and that is praised to high heavens. But The Body, it was very good, but it was my favorite. And I also did really enjoy The Breathing Method. It was so slow for so many of it, but the end of that story and what the breathing method actually is and how it comes into the story upset me so much. It was horrifying to see that. And then the first story, Rita Hayworth in Shawshank Redemption, was my least favorite in it. It was still good. I gave it like a 3.5, but it was a little bit more of like a drama, and it wasn't as interesting to follow as I wanted it to. Beautifully written, I will say, still absolutely amazingly written, but not as entertaining as the other stories. So yeah, Different Seasons overall, I think, is a fantastic collection of 4 novellas, and yeah, it became one of my favorites of the year. And number 17 is James by Percival Everett. This one is again another like phenomenally written story, and it follows Jim, who is in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which I have read, but I read it back at uni or college, or it was a long time ago either way, and I can't really fully remember that story. But Jim does find out that he is about to be sold to a white man in New Orleans, so Jim ends up running away, and it just becomes like this incredible story of like his identity. And also one of the reasons why I freaking love this story was how Jim was characterized. I think Percival Everett did such a phenomenal job at giving this character such a impactful voice. It was also very interesting to see how Jim, who was incredibly smart and intelligent, would have to play a role. Like, he would have to give a performance around the white people around him so that they didn't see him as a threat. And I found every single one of those encounters phenomenally written and so incredibly explored in how the character dynamic shifted depending on the power that Jim had in that moment. So I feel like Percival Everett definitely gave him more power than he ever has before. And again, I can't really remember too much of what happened in Huckleberry Finn or like how all of that was like portrayed in there, but I do think like this book has stood out to me so much. This was in my this reading vlog went out until I found a 5-star, and this one came phenomenally close to getting a 5-star. It got like 4.5. But yeah, this had a lot of emotion. It was very driven. There was like some impactful moment like with a pencil, like something is, you know, insubstantial as a pencil, but it actually does have meaning. And, you know, I'll not say exactly what this pencil stood for and what it represented, but things like that really do highlight just how beautiful this story is and how beautifully it was written. So I definitely think this is one of my favorites of the year, and upon reflection, it might end up going up to a 5-star. There is a potential that I might end up rereading this in the future and seeing if we will give this one a higher rating. In at number 16 is Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. You might be surprised to say this on here, but I did read this back in February, so before all the people were raving about the TV show and all of that, which I still haven't seen, by the way. I will. It's just been announced that it's going to come to streaming in the UK, so I will watch it when it comes here. But I thought this was so hot. It's like one of the hottest male romances I've ever read. And also I was just like genuinely invested in the story. So we do follow Shane and Ilya. They both play pro hockey, but they are on like separate teams, and they are portrayed as enemies. You know, a lot of people see them on the outside as always at each other's throats. They don't get along. However, behind closed doors, they're a fucking. There are fuck 'em. It's good. And there is a whole secrecy angle of this that keeps this book quite entertaining and keeps the stakes pretty high as well, because you don't really want things to come out about them when they're not ready. So they're trying to keep things as secret as possible. And that was very entertaining to follow, I will say. Also, I just really loved Shane and Ilya's personalities. I thought they each brought something so different to their relationship. It didn't feel like a lot of the male romances that I've read. Like, you can see the respect and adoration that they do have for one another, but they keep each other on their toes. They don't just hrim one another, and I mean that metaphorically. They actually challenge one another too. So yeah, I love that dynamic so much. Shane and Ilya were phenomenal to follow. Yeah, number 16. At number 15 is Night Shift by Stephen King, and yet this is the second of three in my top 20, and I did prefer this a little bit more than Different Seasons, although I think when I did my original vlog, the Different Seasons book got a higher average, but that's because this one is filled with more short stories. Like, this is more short stories, it's an anthology, whereas Different Seasons is 4 novellas. This has a lot, and it does have some that weighs this anthology down. There are some stories in this that I do not like. However, I think I gave like 3 or 4 of these short stories a 5-star or thereabouts. So we have Jerusalem's Lot, which was one of my favorite stories. It is set in the Salem's Lot world, and what a banger to open up this collection with, as well as Graveyard Shift. That story also, like those two, oh my gosh, phenomenal back to back. Other ones I loved in this were The Mangler, Sometimes They Come Back, Strawberry Spring, Children of the Corn, and One for the Road. One for the Road is also another Jerusalem's Lot story, but Children of the Corn, right? It sounds very cliche to say that that was one of your favorite stories from this collection. I've never seen the film. I know of it because of The Simpsons. And yeah, The Children of the Corn, it was such a terrifying story to see all of these children be so murderous. And you have a couple come to this, village in the middle of all of this corn, and they have no idea what's going on, and it devolves into chaos. And I really do think Stephen King thrives in short storytelling. He has so many that just got straight to the point, or even then, if he does prolong it, I feel like it has such an impact by the end, and the ending usually does hit effectively. Sometimes they don't in his longer fiction, but in this one, a lot of his stories do end in such a great way that you feel really satisfied with how it concludes. But yeah, I do think One for the Road, Children of the Corn is probably my favorite, but One for the Road is also like up there in terms of favorite as well. Salem's Lot is one of my favorite Stephen King books of all time, so to have those two stories in this just elevates it so much. I really do feel like, I don't think you have to be a Salem's Lot fan to like those two stories, but those two stories definitely stood out to me. So yeah, I just freaking loved this. This was my very first Stephen King short story collection, and I will absolutely be reading more. There are highs, there are lows, but overall it was pretty great. In number 14 is Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. I might have to say that this one is so high up because I ended up reading this while I went to the real Jamaica Inn, and I feel like when I immerse myself in a story like that, where I travel to a place to read the story that was inspired by it, it really does enhance the experience. So maybe I do prefer this a little bit more because of the overall reading experience, more so than just the book itself. But I will say though, this book definitely still had me gripped, and I do think it has a pretty fantastic story. We have Mary, who loses her mother, and she has to cross the Cornish moors to stay with her aunt, and her aunt lives in Jamaica Inn, and there is a landlord who lives and works in Jamaica Inn who is married to Mary's aunt, but he is an awful person. His name is Joss Merlin. Never forget that name. He was a dick, and I freaking ate this up. I loved the drama behind it. I loved seeing Mary give Joss as good as he got. Like, Mary was such a good heroine, and for this time period as well, being able to stand up against, men like that, and very violent and awful men like Joss too. Oh, it just elevated Mary into being one of my favourite heroines of 2025 who I've read personally. But I love the setting of Jamaica Inn too. I love the atmosphere of the Cornish moors. I felt like Daphne du Maurier did such a brilliant job of describing it. And when I was in Jamaica Inn and I could picture everything too, I was like, Daphne du Maurier really did envision this. And she, I mean, Daphne definitely went and did her research. She went to Jamaica a few times herself. And so I could feel that, though. I could feel that through her writing. She made it real. She made me believe that this was set there. And let me just tell you as well, there were definitely some scary things about this. Definitely in terms of like human things. And oh my God, there was like a twist. There was a twist in the last like 100 pages. And it was just so exciting by that point. It was just so exciting. There was murder. There was running across the moors to get help. There was like things happening. Oh my gosh, it was just so riveting. Absolutely riveting. I do feel like you have to kind of be used to a little bit of an older story for you to enjoy this one. But if you can also go to Jamaica Inn and read this yourself, then do it. But I freaking love this. I thought it was great. And this is also the third Daphne du Maurier book that I've read. I've read Rebecca and loved that. And I've read The Birds and I thought that was great too. So hey, Daphne du Maurier might actually be a new favourite author potentially. The biggest plot twist of the year is what comes in at number 13 on my best books list. That is We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. Can you believe Grady Hendrix has made this list? This is his first appearance in my best books of the year list since, I want to say, 2020? 2019 potentially. He's usually made an appearance in my worst books and he still will this year. However, I read one of his backlist books and I love this. I thought it was so fast paced, so exciting. We follow Chris, who did belong in a band years and years and years ago. She now works at a hotel. Her life is pretty shit. And we see through her what her glory days used to be like, in that one of the band members who used to be in the band with her, how he did something that meant that the band would disband. And it also meant that Chris wouldn't ever really have that great of a life. So now she has nothing to lose. She is now on a road trip adventure to get to this guy, find out what happened, and change everything for her life. And there are so many great moments in this. And I even said this in my vlog as well. I got K-pop Demon Hunters vibes from this at the end. And I don't know if that was just me trying to enforce that because I love K-pop Demon Hunters so much. But there was definitely some plot points by the end that just made me like feel like I was watching K-pop Demon Hunters. But I love the exploration of music. I loved how it felt like no character was safe. I was really rooting for the main character. And I was just honestly shocked that I would like a Grady Hendrix book as much as I did, considering we have not been getting along these past few years. In number 12 is A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the sequel to The Tainted Cup. And this one definitely took me by surprise considering I gave The Tainted Cup 4 stars, I believe. And it didn't like make my best books of the year last year, but it was still a really good read. I still enjoyed my time reading it. But this one I definitely prefer over The Tainted Cup. It's a kind of series where each installment just adds more and more to the characters and the world. And yeah, this is fantasy, this is like murder mystery, and it's such a great blending of the genres that I just feel like I haven't read anything like this before, and I may never again. But we do have two main characters. We have Anna, who is like the lead investigator, and Din, who is like her apprentice, and their relationship is one of my favorite things about the series. They are so funny together, especially Anna. Anna is the funniest, and she comes out with some of the most outrageous things. She's a little bit of a Poirot, Sherlock Holmes, but she has the personality and she has the one-liners that just carries me through this story. I don't think there's any boring parts to this whatsoever. I found this to be a very, you know, nicely paced, exciting follow-up to The Tainted Cup, but Anna and her personality. Oh, and I really cared for Din as well. I think Din is a fascinating character and he can be funny in his own right. And seeing his goals and him develop as a character is a true highlight also. And you know, this is still a murder mystery, so there are bodies involved. And this doesn't shy away from being gross and grotesque. And I love the descriptions of it, and it really did help me feel immersed in it because it also added a lot to like the politics of the world also. You see a little bit more of like maybe the royalty of the world and how they tie into everything. And this one is probably higher than I typically would have, but because it was such a pleasant surprise at how much I enjoyed this, that just elevated it even more. Another incredible surprise for me this year. Also, I mean, I was so excited to read it, but I was just so pleasantly surprised. And that is A Hero Born by Jin Yong. This is the first book in the Legends of the Condor series. And I read this when I was in China. So I was also, again, like immersed in its culture. I was immersed in the world. And oh, like this is a bit of an older fantasy as well, translated. So maybe it's not like the most accessible, but oh my gosh, I had such a brilliant time. Also, I think this is Wuxia, which is like a martial arts. I might have said that wrong, but it's like a martial arts kind of fantasy. And when I tell you, like the fight scenes in this were brilliantly described, I could still follow along. And I've never read a book like that before. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a little bit hard to follow. But you say like a fight with like a monk who is carrying a severed head, and you know, things like that. And it's just like, and then, oh my gosh, there was like a couple at the end, and there is like a bit of a translation blip. I was talking about this in my Our Fantasy Bingo episode 1 video, and so many people had to correct me because I was like, oh my god, like there's incest and stuff, and they were just like, no, that's a translation thing, like they're not actually related and stuff. But I still found them so fascinating. So, oh my god, so there was a couple who were like cannibals later on, and the 7 heroes of the South have to like fight them and stuff. Like, oh my god, it was just so brilliant. But we do actually start this book following 2 characters, Ironheart and Skyfury, and they're in this village, and there is a lot going on politics wise with the kingdoms, and things happen. We see the children of Skyfury and Ironheart later on, and the 7 heroes of the South vow to find them and protect them. So that's kind of like the briefest of summaries I can give you with this. But like I just enjoyed myself so much. I can't begin to describe how pleasantly surprised I was by how much I enjoyed this. Again, the translation might not be as accessible to everyone as it typically would, but I'm excited to continue the series. I have the second one pre-ordered from Broken Binding, so you know I'm going to get straight to it. But no, if I was going to do a list of my most surprising books of 2025, this will probably be at the top. Okay, so the top 10 now, and in at number 10 is the final Stephen King book in this list. In at number 10 is It. And I had a little bit of conflicting things about this one, of course. It is so phenomenally long, which means it's not perfect, definitely not perfect, and there are definitely some scenes that I had to side-eye, but I talked about this for what was it, like an hour and a half or something in my Gavin Reads All the King episode when I talked about this. There is so much to say about this book. There is so much to love about this book. And yeah, I feel like you probably already know what this is about. And we have Pennywise, the dancing clown, and him causing terror in Derry, Maine. And we follow the Losers Club, and I absolutely loved the Losers Club. I loved getting to know them. I loved following them as they were growing up. I loved how they would overcome certain situations, how much bravery they had to show in the face of fear. And there were just some phenomenally standout, terrifying scenes in this too. You can't get over the opening. Like, the opening is so iconic with Georgie. And even then, I was so surprised because I'd never read the book before. I'd seen the films, but I'd never read the book. And there are like mixes of like part 1 and part 2, like straight away. And I was just like surprised by the timelines and how the book unfolded, because the timelines are a little bit, you know, different. And it was still really fun to follow that long though. But yeah, there were some horrifying things straight away. Like, this book does not give you a breather at the start. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of padding in this. There's definitely a lot that makes it feel a little bit bogged down. But overall, a fantastic time was had by me. It was so incredibly scary. There were so many times when I was scared, and there were so many things that made me so viscerally angry as well. There were some awful characters, not just Pennywise, but there were some other awful villains, and it just gave me such a visceral reaction every time they came on the page. And what you found out about them as well, and Stephen King does not shy away from showing you what these awful characters do. And like, I wish I didn't see half of the stuff that happened in this book, absolutely, but I do love a horror that makes me feel this way and gives me that kind of like, oh, like I kind of wish that I hadn't read that, you know? So yeah, I thought it was fantastic. It's my favorite Stephen King book of the year, at least like new to me. I did reread Pet Sematary and Misery this year. Those two are my favorite Stephen King books of all time, but I'm not including rereads, otherwise they will be like in the top 5, absolutely. But yeah, I feel like as I'm reading all of Stephen King for the first time over the next couple of years, I feel like, and I hope, you will still continue to see Stephen King in my top books of the year. Otherwise, it's downhill, and I probably will want to scrap that series. So hopefully I continue to enjoy them. In number 9 is Don't Let the Forest In by C.J. Drew. So this took over BookTube last year, I think. I was a little bit late on the hype on this one, but I read this one twice this year, actually. I did read this twice, and I enjoyed it phenomenally both times. In fact, I think I actually preferred it the second time I read it. In this one, we follow Andrew, and he writes these really twisted kind of fairy tales for Thomas. And he, you know, Andrew goes back to school with him, and it is like a young adult, I guess you could say like academia kind of fantasy horror. And there's definitely some weird shit with Thomas. 100%. And like even the dynamic between Thomas and Andrew is so utterly fascinating. So you do have like a lot of queer undertones, which I really appreciated, because it does take a skilled writer to be able to pull that off and keep it believable and yeah, like really investing. There were again like some beautifully horrific things that happened also. The way that it's described, the way that some of like the naturist things came into it was just so brilliantly done. There were a couple of things that took me by surprise with the plot, but it just kept my attention and I loved all of the details. I also loved the formatting of this book too. You would sometimes have pages like this where parts of like Andrew's stories would go, and just things like Andrew saying he needed Thomas but he'd always known Thomas didn't need him in the same way. There's just like such a complex look at that. A lot of exploration into unrequited feelings. I'm pretty sure though there was some illustrations. Where the hell are the illustrations? Oh, there we go. Like, look at that. Like, I love some of the illustrations in this. So phenomenal. Just all of the elements put together made this such a fantastic story. I really enjoyed it. And at number 8 is the book that should have been in the shortlist for the Goodreads Choice Awards. That is Blood on Her Tongue by Joanna Van Veen. This gave me so many visceral reactions. I read this when I went to the Haunted Castle earlier this year, and there's just some really gross shit in this. And I was literally like reading it, and I was like writing things down, and I was just like, oh, did we really need to go there? So this one is set in 1887. We follow Lucy, and she's getting letters from her twin sister Sarah, and her twin sister is not feeling very well. But also her twin sister Sarah ended up finding a body in the bog, and it's such a weird and really grotesque kind of discovery. And we find out about that very slowly as well. So that storyline kept me so riveted. But then we also have Lucy coming to Sarah so that she can help her. And there's also Sarah's husband there as well. And oh my gosh, let's just a weird dynamic going on. There is quite a lot of horror, a lot of gross horror in this too. And I can make a lot of comparisons of this to Hungerstone by Kat Dunn as well, but I definitely preferred this one. Oh, and there's some really suspenseful moments where the author can describe like sounds of scratching and other sort of paranoia that the main character starts to feel as she is, you know, trying to help her sister and she's come to this place. So wonderfully gothic and atmospheric. I've got so many underlinings in this and so many moments that I just freaking loved. So yeah, Blood on Her Tongue, definitely my top 10 of the year. I think this is actually my second favourite horror. In at number 7 is another sequel, and that is Brimstone by Callie Hart. I loved Quicksilver last year. It actually made my top books of the year also. And this one was not as good as Quicksilver, but by God was I entertained throughout this. This is a series where we follow Ceres. In the first book, she ends up opening a portal into the Fey world. While she gets into the Fey world, she meets Kingfisher, and there is a love story there, and blah, blah, blah. There's lots of stuff going on in the first book, okay? This book definitely helps to show you a little bit more of the world. It helps you see Ceres as a character come more into her own and what her role in this world is going to be moving forward. So I love the explorations of that. There was also a lot of great moments where Kingfisher, the main love interest, and Ceres, the main character, are kind of apart. And I was so worried that that was going to happen. But this author showed us just how strong these characters are separately. She shows them that they can each stand on their own 2 feet. They're not too obsessed with one another, even though they do go into a little bit of obsessive territory every now and then. But like, that's fine, they're in love. But one thing I always worry about with like romances or romanticities is when the characters can't stand on their own 2 feet. But these characters definitely stood on their own 2 feet. And I loved the plotline of The Rot. I thought that added a really exciting element to the sequel as well. And I just loved my time reading it. I was just so highly entertained. Do I think this is like one of the best books ever, or like one of the best books ever written? Absolutely not. But by George, was I riveted from beginning to end. It's one of those reading experiences again where you just like have a lot of fun, and you can always just like look back on reading it with like a smile on your face and just be like, oh gosh, I remember when I read that. It was a great time and it was just like so much fun, so entertaining. I loved it. In at number 6 is a short story actually, and that is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. And just like Jamaica Inn, I do think that because I went to Sleepy Hollow and I read this while I was there, I think that definitely helped me to love the story even more. I mean, I still feel like I would have enjoyed it even if I wasn't at Sleepy Hollow. But I do love me a classic every now and then. And I love the story of Ichabod Crane, and I love the story of the Headless Horseman. And this had such beautiful descriptions. It had such great descriptions of food as well. So in some ways, this was a little bit cozy, while also being rather scary at the same time. And will this be for everyone? Absolutely not. I think it's like, what, 30 pages? And we do take a little while getting to the iconic moment where Ichabod Crane comes across the Headless Horseman. So I really do feel like you have to be into your classics to like really like this one. But honestly, I was gripped. My butthole was clenched by the time that we got to the scenes for the horsemen at the end. Like, throughout the entire story, we were building and building and building to it. We heard stories of other people coming across the Headless Horseman, just not our main character. So the reputation of the Headless Horseman just preceded the Headless Horseman. We just never got to see him until the end. And it was a delivery that was so worth it. It was tense and it was great. And yeah, again, like, I just think reading this in Sleepy Hollow just made it that much better for me personally. And Ichabod Crane was not a character I was rooting for, let me tell you. He was not the best. But when we get to Headless Horseman Bridge, when we see the paranoia of Ichabod Crane as he's like walking through, and we get descriptions of the grove and like hearing like haunted screams, and also the ambiguity of the ending too. We actually don't really know what happens by the end, and there's just so much mystery at the end. And yeah, I just freaking loved it. So top 6, definitely top 6. And again, it was only 30 pages long. In number 5 is Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. This is definitely my favorite horror of the year. I fell in love with Kylie Lee Baker's writing style. In this, we follow Cora, and she is a crime scene cleaner, and she witnessed the murder of her sister during the pandemic, and it was horrifying, absolutely horrifying. It was a racially motivated attack, and yeah, it left Cora scarred, it left me scarred as a reader. And now Cora does like clean up crime scenes, and really sinister weird shit starts to happen as well, and things to do with like, because Bat Eater is a slur given to Asian people during the pandemic, and so things like that really does creep into the narrative and the plot as well. Oh gosh, it did get really intense, got really scary, very visceral. The author has a really great way of making things feel alive through their description. Like, she even made New York City feel alive as well. So New York felt almost like a character in itself. I was also loving Cora's friends as well. There's like a really good friend group in this. There are some great characters involved. Not as developed as the main character, but Cora, oh my gosh, I was absolutely rooting for her. I wanted answers as well with what happened to her sister. And it's a really short book too. Like, it's not actually that long. So quick, punchy, and very effective. In number 4, and this is such a surprise for me, but at the same time, kind of not, considering I had like romantasy in my previous best books of the year as well, but The Serpent and the Wings and I by Carissa Broadbent. I was so shocked by how much I love this. I did think I would enjoy this. Like, I didn't go out my way to buy this thinking I wouldn't like it. I did think I would enjoy this, but I didn't think of how much I would enjoy this. Oh, the twists and turns. The end of this book was, oh my gosh. I did read the sequel and I wasn't in love with the sequel, so I kind of just wish that I kept this as standalone, I'm not gonna lie. But in this one we follow Araya, and she is the adopted daughter of like a vampire king. There is a tournament that Araya wants to join because she wants to prove herself, especially being the daughter or the adopted daughter of the vampire king. So yeah, we have the whole like tournament thing, which can be done to death, but oh, it was so good, so fun, so entertaining. I really loved how headstrong Araya was. She literally gave as good as she got. And there is something to be said about Carissa Broadbent being able to use a plot that is done to death with the whole like tournament stuff and still make it quite fresh and exciting and new. So there are like comparisons to the Hunger Games that you can make with this. But oh, this just went off the rails. It got so messy by the end. The family dynamics, the politics, oh, just got so utterly messy, and I was sat for every single page. Just not what I was expecting. It over-delivered on its promises. In at number 3 is book number 4 in the Dungeon Crawler Call series, The Gate of the Feral Gods. Definitely my favourite Dungeon Crawler Call book I read this year. So I read the first book last year. It made my best books of the year. It was one of my favourite books of the year. And now, book number 4 is one of my favourites too. This one had like one of the most adventurous plots to date. Like the Dungeon Crawler Call world, we do follow Carl and Princess Donut, his cat or was her ex-girlfriend's cat. And aliens have taken over the planet. They put all the surviving, humans into these dungeons, and they call them crawlers, and they are being aired to Dungeon Crawler World, which has been aired to the aliens. And now Carl and Princess Donna find themselves in this lit RPG world where they have to fight and battle and level up and gain experience, and oh my gosh, like so many things that go up the levels of the dungeons, and like it's so good. I explain it all the time, but in this book there is a bit of another adventure element, and I love how each floor feels different as well. It can very easily become a series that gets repetitive, but I do think Matt Dinniman makes every single book feel different and new and unique, because every single dungeon floor feels so different and new and unique to the last one. But what I loved most about this was the goal in this, like what the actual Gate of the Feral Gods challenge, what that quest was. There are 3 pieces of an artifact that the characters have to get from 3 different like bosses, and that in itself was just so exciting to follow. But I did love all of the other like little side quests. I love the little boss battles that would happen. Absolutely love, again as always, the banter between Carl and Princess Donna. They are some of my favorite characters, and I feel like 4 books into the series as well, I'm still learning new things about them. I'm still caring so much about them, and I just can't wait to continue reading the series. Honestly, I still have books 5, 6, and 7, and I think book 8 comes out next year, so I would be very disappointed if not a single Dungeon Crawler Carl book makes my best books of 2026. But for the time being, the series has made my best books of the year 2 years running, so I will take that as a win. So book number 2, and it is the last sequel of the video, The Strength of the Few by James Islington. I loved it. I loved it so much. The Will of the Many was my favourite new to me book of last year. The Strength of the Few did not disappoint. It definitely does feel a little bit different to the first book. We have a different kind of writing style to the first book, absolutely, with like the different characters and stuff. But I still think this one had me in a chokehold the entire way through. The first book followed Vis, and he becomes a little bit of a mole at the academy, and he does like infiltrate. He has to try and find things out and see what like secrets are lurking beneath the surface. And it got so twisty and dangerous and violent and bloody. In the end of The Will of the Many was so phenomenal. I was so excited, but also a little bit nervous going into The Strength of the Few, because I was worried that it wouldn't live up to the hype for me, because this was the most hyped book that I had of the year, but it did not, again, disappoint. I loved it so much. I loved the storylines. I loved how exciting this felt throughout. There was definitely an interesting plot device used in this story too that will make future installments in the series feel that much more high stakes. And yeah, like it's so hard to talk about sequels in a best books of the year video, because I'm just like, this is the second book in the series, how much can I actually say without spoiling? But I read this in the same vlog as Brimstone. I had the time of my life. I was just having so much fun. I was highly entertained. I found it so exciting. There were still some twists and turns in this that left me a little bit gagged. Some things I had to rethink from the first book in order for me to understand some things in this book too. It's definitely a challenging book. I don't think this is like the easiest one to read. It definitely challenged me as a reader, and I love it when a book can do that. So yeah, I can't really say too much about it, but it was a definite 5-star. I am loving the Hierarchy series so much, and I'm hoping that future installments do not disappoint, because the bar is in heaven. So my number 1 book of the year, and it's so funny because this was actually my very first 5-star of the year, that is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. And I have not read The Sword of Kaigan. That is so high on my list right now. You have no idea. But I freaking love this. I got so obsessed with it. I love the plot of this. And I love the fact that we have a main character who you do not... Well, it's so complex. I was rooting for her, and then she would say things, and then I was not rooting for her anymore. But anyway, sorry, yeah. This is about Siona. She becomes the very first ever like high mage who is admitted into like this prestigious order of mages, and she has studied magic all her life. There is something called the Blight that is happening in this world as well. It is a bit of a utopia, but there are different places like outside of this utopia, and Siona has been like studying magic, and yeah, there is that Blight, and it's something that is definitely a problem. And finding out more about that in the Blight and what that is and stuff was one of the most exciting reading experiences I've had this year. And I love the fact that we explore so many different themes through Siona, the main character. Like, she is probably one of the most plot-driven main characters I've ever read, because everything seemed to be quite important to explore through her. So, you know, we have the gender politics with her being the first ever female high mage and what that entails. And honestly, I was rooting for her so much, and I loved seeing it. I loved the conversations around it, and I loved how she would sometimes combat, you know, sexism. And yet there are other themes that we had to explore as well, like colonialism, and how that kind of permeates the story when we see a friendship develop between Siona and a janitor, for instance. That dynamic was phenomenal to read as well. I loved that character dynamic. I think character work is done so freaking well in this. The excitement of the Blight and find out more about that in the world, and kind of unlearning things as well. There is so much that Siona needs to do to unlearn what she's being taught. And like, what do you do in that situation? And how do you start to fix certain situations? And I don't need to fully love a main character in order for me to love the story. But following Siona, following her journey, following her character arc, and the things that she ends up doing was amazing to read. Absolutely amazing, incredible to read. So exciting from beginning to end. Definitely my favorite book of the year, and I love the fact that this is a standalone too. And I wanted a sequel. Like, when I finished this book, I was like, oh my god, is there a sequel? I want to read the sequel like right now. I love the fact that this left me wanting more, but it's also phenomenal as a standalone. Like, it's so good. The magic system, the world, everything was just chef's kiss. So yeah, Sword of Kaigen, here I come. So there we have it. Those were my top 20 books of 2025. Please do let me know down below what your best books of the year are. I would love to know. I'd love to know if we have some crossovers as well. Is there anything you loved that maybe I talked about in this video? Tell me everything in the comments. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you haven't already. Use those high points if you have any. Feel free to join my channel memberships if you would like more content. And a huge thank you as well to my existing members as well. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye.